now Candace Owens has had a line of rhetoric that they're uncomfortable with, so they fired her, which means all of the people opposed to the Daily Wire, or who maybe are just really big Candace Owens fans, can point a finger at the company and say, you guys are just hypocrites, man. You say you're for free speech, but you're not actually. The Daily Wire is a conservative media company. They have hosts like Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, Andrew Klavan, and for the last several years, they've had Candace Owens. However, all of that came to an end this week as Jeremy Boring, the CEO of Daily Wire, tweeted out that the Daily Wire and Candace Owens had ended their relationship. They are parting ways. Now, this sent people into a firestorm, accusations that the Daily Wire says that they love free speech. And anytime someone tries to come against free speech, then they're there, the big defenders of freedom of speech, and they're going to do whatever they want. But now Candace Owens has had a line of rhetoric that they're uncomfortable with, so they fired her, which means all of the people opposed to the Daily Wire, or who maybe are just really big Candace Owens fans, can point a finger at the company and say, you guys are just hypocrites, man. You say you're for free speech, but you're not actually. So how do we think about this? Are they free speech hypocrites? Are they just wise business people? Let's look at, this is an article from CNN, so it is going to lean quite left, just so you know that as we read it, but it does lay out the controversy quite well. The Daily Wire, the right-wing media outlet co-founded by Ben Shapiro, said Friday it had severed ties with Candace Owens, the far-right commentator who has ignited a torrent of backlash in recent months for her repeated embrace of anti-Semitic rhetoric. Daily Wire and Candace Owens have ended their relationship, Jeremy Boring said in a statement posted online. Owens confirmed the news in her own post, writing, "The rumors are true. I'm finally free." Since the October 7th Hamas terror attack on Israel, Owens has repeatedly waded into anti-Semitic waters as she fiercely criticized Israel, suggesting the Jewish government was committing genocide in Gaza and claiming there's a sinister small ring of Jewish people in Hollywood and Washington, D.C. involved in something quite sinister. In November, Shapiro, who is Jewish, called out Owens for her disgraceful rhetoric, blasting her faux sophistication on the topic. Without directly naming Shapiro, Owens responded that one cannot serve both God and money, a brazen dig at the Daily Wire co-founder that was drenched in an age-old anti-Semitic trope. At the time, Shapiro hit back, "Candace, if you feel that taking money from the Daily Wire somehow comes between you and God, by all means, quit." Owens then attacked Shapiro in an interview with Tucker Carlson, the right-wing extremist who was fired last year from Fox News, accusing him of ad hominem attacks. In recent days, Owens has continued to generate more controversy, liking a post on X in which a user accused a rabbi of being drunk on Christian blood. Owens' behavior earned her the praise of those pushing hatred of the Jewish community, which the Anti-Defamation League noted Thursday when it blasted her for pushing an anti-Semitic agenda and fueling the fire of hate. Owens responded by accusing the ADL of having turned their smear merchant guns on her. So CNN is making value statements about her. She's saying that she attacked Shapiro and she did this anti-Semitic thing. What it lays out, though, is the fact pattern. Here are the conversations that were had. Most of it was had on X, formerly known as Twitter. And there was back and forth that was unhealthy between her and Ben Shapiro. And she has towed the line on sharing some of her opinions, which I always try to ascribe the best intentions to people. I think maybe they really are her opinions and it's what she's thinking. And I don't know where she's sourcing her information from, but some of them have felt at least adjacent to other talking points that are common in anti-Semitic circles. And then it became somewhat of a pattern. The bottom line is our words do matter and our words bear consequence. Proverbs, the great book of wisdom, says the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. In other words, if you speak life, you will eat the fruit of life. If you speak death, you will eat the fruit of death. And we have to be really careful. And, this is a tiny YouTube channel that I run here. It's a very small podcast. But I try to really think through what I'm going to say and to use my words carefully. And if at some point I do say something unknowingly that causes unnecessary controversy, I'll address it. And if I need to apologize, I'll apologize for it. And I'll try not to let that turn into a pattern. And so what exactly is happening here and how do we understand this? And the question is is Daily Wire being hypocritical because they stand by free speech, but now they have fired someone for her speech? I think part of what we have to understand is the Daily Wire is a private publisher, not a public platform. Publishers always have editorial guidelines that all content creators are subject to. A public platform does not have editorial guidelines. At least it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be public and free and a platform for anyone to say whatever they want. That is not the same as a publisher. The Daily Wire is conservative. They do not hide that. They're very obvious. They have some highly conservative commentators on there, and they don't have any liberal commentators on there. And if one of their right-wing podcasters all of a sudden had some kind of revolution in their life and became pro-choice and pro-open borders, and they wanted to talk about that every week, they would also end their relationship with Daily Wire, I guarantee, because they have editorial guidelines like all private publishers do. And if you work for them, you have to follow those guidelines. And so Candace came on, she was given a great platform. I think she probably boosted their ratings and their subscriptions. I'm sure it was mutually beneficial for a time. I don't know, and you don't know what was happening on the back end of this. What we saw was played out publicly. And part of my takeaway is you shouldn't do these things publicly. And Candace, to her credit, even addressed that at times with Ben, like, hey, you have my phone number. If you don't like this tweet or if I'm missing something, call me instead of like blasting me here on X. Let's be civil and have a conversation about this. And I do believe he should have done that. The question on hypocrisy, though, I think falls short. The reason is that logically, there is a difference between Candace having the right to say things and her having the right to get paid for saying them. In other words, there is no logical reason to claim hypocrisy for the leadership of the Daily Wire. They can logically both fully support the political and social ideal of free speech. Everyone should be able to say everything that they want. That's a hugely important concept. It is in our First Amendment, and it's first because it protects all the other ones. Everyone should say everything. Good ideas, bad ideas, great ideas, terrible ideas. And then we should debate them. But in order to debate them and collectively come up with the good ideas that push society forward, everyone's got to be able to say everything. But that doesn't mean logically it follows that I have to pay you from my company to say things that are against our guidelines. To claim hypocrisy, there has to be some kind of logical and value-based disconnect. And I just don't think there is here. For the Daily Wire, whether you think Candace is being anti-Semitic or not, and that's up to you. You can tell me in the comments whether you think she is or she's not. I try to ascribe best intentions until I see really good evidence otherwise. But whether or not she is, it does appear that the leadership of the Daily Wire does think that she is. They are convinced that what she's saying is anti-Semitic at some level and that there's a pattern. And I'm assuming, but we don't know, that behind closed doors, she has been instructed about these things, led to see why they are seen as anti-Semitic and asked to stop, and she hasn't. So if that didn't happen, that's bad leadership. I imagine there were some conversations had, and she continued in a pattern that they view as the leadership as anti-Semitic. And so they let her go. And they let her go for the reputation and reliability of their brand. They're a very large company at this point. Proverbs 22 says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. They are losing subscribers who believe that they're hypocrites because of this. They're losing subscribers who were largely a part of Daily Wire because of Candace Owens. They're losing subscribers who think that they are called like the boy who cried wolf on what they're calling anti-Semitism because they don't agree with that. They think that Candace is onto something and they don't agree with their assertion, but it is their assertion, allegedly, and they have ended that relationship, and we don't know all of the details. But I go back to the logical argument. There is not a logical disconnect between the leadership of Daily Wire fully believing in free speech, but also not paying someone to say things against their publisher guidelines. It's obviously different. I don't run some kind of political media company. I'm the leader of a church, and we have a decently sized staff and a lot of contractors and quite a few people who are on our stage given any Sunday, and hundreds of people who attend and hundreds of people who watch online. And I'm a huge believer politically and socially in free speech. I think it is what has actually made us a great and enduring country. It is like the right that protects all other rights. Because as soon as you can regulate what someone can say, you can control what rights are granted. So I'm a huge believer in free speech. Also, anyone who speaks on stage at Metachurch, I get their script and I edit it. There are editorial guidelines at Metachurch. So I can both be an absolute believer in free speech and say, in our 501c3 religious nonprofit, the organization, as well as the 2,000-year-old movement called the church that I'm helping to oversee at the local level, you cannot just get up on stage and say whatever you want. We're going to be careful about what we say on stage because we have a very specific mission in what we're trying to do. And because we're trying to reach people for Christ, we want to make sure our words are careful and crafted and honoring to God. And that doesn't mean I don't believe in free speech in public platforms. It means in the thing that I'm responsible for, there are going to be guidelines and they are going to be enforced. And so at the end of this, what lessons should we learn? Number one, I think we should be very careful about who we allow to represent us in life. If you're the leader of an organization, the leader of a team, just your friend group, we should be very careful. And I don't think people do a good enough job vetting other people before bringing them in and letting them be representatives of their brand. We should be very careful about that. Number two, we should demand a culture of in-person problem solving. You should not problem solve with your coworkers on Twitter for the world to see. That's bad. You should not problem solve with your coworkers over text messages or even Zoom calls if you can avoid it. You shouldn't problem solve with your spouse over text messages or emails. We should demand a culture in our lives, in our families, with our friends, and in our places of work of in-person problem solving. And I have to think, and maybe they did and we don't know, it's behind the scenes. I have to think that if Ben and Jeremy Boring, the CEO, and Candace Owens, if they would have all gotten face-to-face repeatedly and worked on this until they could iron it out, that potentially they could have solved all of this controversy before it grew into what it has become. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed so you can stay up to date with all new content. And if you want early access, exclusive content, and monthly live Q&As, make sure to check out patreon.com/ClaytonTyner.